The main story, though, that basically is dominating the news in the United States, as it should, and that is a horror for those living in Southern California, particularly in Los Angeles County and maybe in Ventura County, is the fire situation in Los Angeles. As you know, vast swaths of areas within Los Angeles have burned down. The neighborhood of Palos Verdes, which is a beautiful, beautiful neighborhood, not far from Beverly Hills, not far from Brentwood. Many, many homes have burned down, including many multi-million-dollar homes. This is where the rich in Los Angeles, many of the rich live. But you've also got fires really raging all over Los Angeles County. You've also got fires in Ventura County. And the firefighters have not been able to, now over a week, have not been able to really control these fires. They've not been able to suppress them. They're barely under control right now. The Palos Verdes fire is still going on. And there've been a lot of, this has brought to the surface, a lot of accusations against the LA Fire Department, its practices, against the governor and the mayor of Los Angeles, and has really brought to the surface the real ugliness of what is happening in California, the ugly consequences of the environmentalist policies, the ugly consequences of the DEI processes, and even more important than both of those, the ugly consequences of the state intervening in markets, in particular with regard to this case, insurance markets. And what you have here is really just a classical case of government failure, massive government failure. I mean, where do you even start? There's so many different issues that are being just revealed over the last week because of these fires. You can start with just the California, LA County obsession with environmental concerns. So just to give you one example, but this is one example among many, 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 many examples, right? In 2019, this is from the Wall Street Journal. 2019, the LA Department of Water and Power sought to widen a fire access road and replace old wooden utility poles in the Topanga Canyon that abuts the Palisades with steel ones to make power lines fire and wind resistant. In the process, crews removed an estimated 182 Bronton milk velch plants. I'm mispronouncing that, but who the F cares? Which is, by the way, an endangered species. I'm sure you didn't know that, but they are an endangered species. The utility halted the project as state officials investigated the plant's destruction. More than a year later, the California Coastal Commission, just as an aside, one of the most evil government entities in the United States. It's just a fascist, it was actually created by an immigrant from Germany with fascist tendencies, a really fascist organization. The California Coastal Commission issued a cease and desist order, fined the utility $2 million, and required mitigation for the project's impact on this plant, on this species. So they had to replace non-native vegetation with plants native to the state. And so what the California progressives care about is Bronton's milk velch plants. They don't give a damn about how homes burning. I mean, maybe they celebrate homes burning. They don't want people living in California. They want California to be run over by by native plants and native animals. So, here they are preventing the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power from actually doing the right thing, actually widening, doing something that might have prevented this fire, might have prevented fires. Now, one of the things about milk velch, this plant, it requires wildfires to propagate. That's the way it grows. It grows by having having the land burn. Right. So human beings, not so much. Don't care so much. Milk velch plants, never heard of them? Yeah, that's what we're going to invest in. That's what we want. So that's just one example of dozens. We'll get to the smelt in a minute. But that's one example of the environmentalists basically prohibiting doing what was necessary to reduce the potential of fires to get to neighborhoods, reduce the damage fires might do. Notes that things like clearing the underbrush, controlled fires, these are things that professionals understand. It's what you have to do if you're going to control the fuel. So last year and the year before, California had huge amounts of rain. So a lot of growth. And then this year, since basically the summer, there's been almost no rain. So all of that stuff that grew when it rained is now dry. That's the fuel for the fire. Proper fire management, proper land management would involve clearing all that underbrush. Clearing all that underbrush and, reducing the amount of fuel that the fire can use, if it gets started. Don't do that. Remember, all this land is government-owned land. So, the environmentalists basically prevent doing what makes sense. They prevent the management of the land in a way that. Whoops! What is going on here? All right. And where did all of that go? Sorry, what's that? Something has disappeared on me. There it is. Prevent doing what is necessary in order to minimize the possibility of fire and minimize the damage that fire will create if it happens. None of that is being done. Now, on top of that, let me just find this. What am I looking for? Okay, let's move. So I'm just organizing windows on my screen. We will get there. There it is. All right. Now, there's been a lot of talk about the budget of the LA Fire Department. But it turns out the budget for the LA Fire Department is actually not shrunk. But what's interesting is that the fire budget didn't shrink. It indeed expanded because a new union contract with firefighters boosted pay and benefits by $76 million, which is about $20,000 per firefighter. They were already earning on average about $200,000 plus $90,000 in benefit. They got a 10% increase by $20,000. They can retire at 55. They get pensions equaling 90% of their final salaries. So they gave them a raise, but then what they did was, in order to partially pay for that, they cut fire prevention budgets, right? The budget of the things that firefighters do, the equipment they use to do it, by 5%. So they cut part of the budget, but in order to curry favor, let's say, with the unions, which is a long tradition in California, they gave them a massive raise. So add to that the fact that Los Angeles spends $350 million a year on firefighter pension and benefits. Again, they are eager to cut the department's budget. And of course, Los Angeles fire chief has said on television that her number one top priority, this is before the fires, the number one top priority as the fire chief of Los Angeles was diversity, inclusion, and equity. Diversity, inclusion, and equity, bribe the firefighters union. I'm not sure exactly for what, maybe for their votes in a city election. Don't let those little plants that are native to California, can't remove those. We can't do anything to stop fires if we're harming the little plants. The little plants get priority no matter what. So more reasons why these fires are out of control. And then there was the issue of water. The firefighters got to some of the places and they connected to hydrants and there was no water. Now, one of the reservoirs is completely empty for repair. Second time in 2 years, it's empty for repair. Complete insanity. They can't keep the reservoir, and it's got to do with the cover. There has to be, the reservoir actually has a cover on top of it. And there was something wrong with the cover twice now. And so they emptied the reservoir because you couldn't have the reservoir be there without a cover on it. The cover is to protect the water somehow. I've never seen reservoirs with covers, but I read this, so. Anyway, one of the main issues in California with regard to water is that Northern California, parts of Northern California, have massive amounts of water. Massive amounts of water. And there have been projects on the board, on paper, to funnel that water. I mean, much of the water from in Southern California comes from the north. There are all kinds of water projects from the beginning of the 20th century, middle of the 20th century, that moved water from the north to the south. And there's still a lot more water that could be moved from the north to the south. The south is, climate change or no climate change, the south gets a lot of droughts. It's dry. It doesn't rain much in Southern California. The Beach Boys wrote a song about it, right? So, and if climate change is happening, then that'll only become more. It'll only become drier, maybe. Except for the years where it rains a lot, and then there are floods. So one solution to the dryness is to bring water from the north to the south. Literally billions of gallons of water every year are flushed out to the Pacific Ocean while California has massive water shortages. Why? Why? Because they haven't figured out how to move the water to the south while not disturbing smelt. This little fish thing, the Delta smelt fish. The Delta smelt fish would be harmed if water was moved to the south. And with that quantity of water moved to the south, it would solve a lot of these problems of empty reservoirs and problems of dryness and problems of lack of water more generally that the Southern California suffers from. But as we know, the Delta smelt fish is far more important than your home, far more important than your community, and of course, far more important than your life. I mean, don't be selfish. It's you or the Delta smelt fish. And in California, there's no question at all on how that one is decided. It goes completely to the smelt fish. And Newsom, Gavin Newsom, has been big, very big on fish protection. Not so much on human being protection, fish protection. He's a very, very, I mean, if fish could vote, they would definitely vote for Gavin Newsom. Now, a lot of these fires, we don't know yet about this particular fire, though it's likely. A lot of these fires are started by the homeless. Most of it not on purpose, but they live in places that are, that have a lot of dry brush. They live in encampments. They have open fires. Indeed, according to the Los Angeles Times, in early 2021, there were 24 fires on average each day in city homeless encampments. Now, if an encampment is in downtown LA, probably not going to cause a fire. But an encampment on the fringes of LA, and LA is full of green areas or gray areas when there's no water, you know what that causes. Indeed, last week, a homeless man was detained with a flamethrower trying to incinerate Christmas trees and garbage cans. I mean, these people, a lot of these homeless are mentally unstable. Now, whether he was the one who started the fire or not, we don't know, but he's a suspect. He's a suspect. So, all of these problems catching up with California, the environmental issues, the water issues, the groveling before the unions, and the cutting budgets for things that relate to human beings. The sense in which California does not value human life. It really doesn't. Not when you have the Delta smelt fish. Now, on top of that, we now have this massive destruction. And a lot of the people whose homes have been destroyed, it turns out, don't have insurance. Now, why? Let me just, we'll talk about that in a minute. So they don't have insurance. Why don't they have insurance? Well, because insurance companies are not allowed by law to charge them the actual rate that compensates the insurance company for the risk. In California, there are price controls on fire insurance. This goes back to Proposition 103. It was passed, 20 years ago, something like that. Maybe somebody could figure out the exact date. Look, I sometimes in California, a proposition passes that is great. But democracy sucks. Propositions are a form of direct democracy. Direct democracy is not good. Most people don't know what's right, what's good, what works. 1988, sorry, it was passed in 1988, so that's much more than 20 years ago. And basically what Proposition 103 did was place price controls on fire insurance. So if an insurer shows they need a 40% increase to cover expected costs and get a fair return, and let's say they do that and regulators only approve 15%, then, they are, if they write these insurance policies, they're likely to have real losses. California ranks 50th in rate suppression. That is where the government forces rates down. Approving rates 29% below what actuaries show is needed for homeowners insurance. So regulators force insurers to sell way, way, way below costs. Now, as a consequence of that, a lot of insurers have just left the state. It's just impossible for many people to get insurance. Now, they could get insurance in a market if the insurance was priced properly. Now, on top of that, California won't let insurance use catastrophic models to project future fire risk. So let's say I'm an insurance company and I go to the regulators and say, look, I agree with you guys. Global warming is a problem. There are probably going to be more fires in the future. And here's a model that it's not the most likely, but it's something we have to take into account. Here's a catastrophic model where there's a catastrophic fire and thousands of homes burn down. The regulator says, no, you can't use those models. You can't assume the worst case scenario. You can't assume bad outcomes. You can assume moderately bad outcomes, but not really, really, really bad outcomes. And then most insurance companies reinsure the risk. They actually have insurance on insurance. California will not let them consider the reinsurance costs. So again, this forces the companies to charge a lot less than they would otherwise want to charge. When you do want to change rates, everything happens very, very, very slowly. California delays rate hikes for as long as it can. The average delay of a rate hike is 236 days. And so, you could go through 3/4 of a year or 2/3 of a year and not even get the suppressed rate from what you requested. And it's just getting worse. That is, the California insurance regulator is just becoming more and more and more authoritarian. As a consequence, State Farm, Allstate, farmers of all pulling back. They're all stopping to insure homes. And therefore, there were a lot of homes that burned down, didn't have insurance. And on top of that, a lot of homeowners figure FEMA's going to come in, California's going to come in, and they're going to cover me. So why buy insurance? Indeed, there is a California alternative. I think State Farm, if I remember right, State Farm refused to, this was earthquake insurance in California. You couldn't buy earthquake insurance in California because of the same kind of games that they were playing. So if you wanted earthquake insurance, you had to buy it from the state. And the state, as a consequence, has massive potential liabilities, just massive, that would bankrupt California if there was a major earthquake, or if there's a major series of fires, because a lot of the fire policies now are basically being held by California. So price controls have, surprise, horrific consequence on the ability to get fire insurance. So insurers have abandoned large swaths, large areas of California, and people will now be able to build their homes. Now, and this will be the final one of government intervention. I mean, government intervention in the economy is always disastrous. And nobody ever learns. Nobody ever learns. Indeed, they've learned the opposite, because now the right in America wants to intervene in markets just as much as the left. So it's more popular than ever. Than ever. So the latest is that Newsom has said, when it comes to rebuilding the homes, you can rebuild fast. We're going to streamline permitting. We're going to streamline everything. We're going to make it really, really fast. Now, first of all, why don't they do that regularly? Streamline. Oh, I wanted one more thing about insurance. Sorry, one more thing about insurance. And then we'll get to this. One of the consequences of the fact that everybody that insurance prices are low because the government forces them down. So it's relative to true cost, it's relatively cheap to get fire insurance. One of the consequences of that is that people build in fire-prone areas and buy insurance. If insurance prices actually reflected the real risk, it would provide a demotivator. It would provide an incentive not to build in fire-prone areas. Because if you did, you would have to pay a really, really high premium on your insurance policy. So price controls increase the risk people take. This is true in flood insurance, hurricane insurance, flood, all these things. So people build homes in flood zones because the insurance companies are not allowed to price the real risk of flooding. They build homes on beaches in Louisiana, which are prone to hurricanes, because insurance companies are not allowed to price. And when insurance companies leave, the government steps in and sells them insurance anyway. This is the beauty of markets. Markets price real risk. So if you engage in risky activity, you're going to have to pay for it. And at the margin, that disincentivizes people from engaging in the risky behavior, like building homes in flood zones, hurricane zones, fire zones. But we've taken that away. We've taken any incentive that markets provide on not engaging in risky behavior, and we've taken them away, and guess what happens? People engage in risky behavior. All right, let's see. Newsom has said you can build your homes, we're going to fast track it, but the one thing I will not tolerate, and the same came from the mayor of Los Angeles, is we are going to prosecute to the full extent of the law. We're going to hunt you down. We're going to find you. We're going to prosecute you. Anybody caught during this period in price gouging. Now, again, I don't think I have to explain again. We've done this exercise over and over again, why price gouging is a good thing, particularly in a crisis like this. Why price gouging encourages more people to enter the market and provide more goods. Price gouging allows the people who most value the good to get it immediately, and those who value it less not to get it now, but to wait until more supply comes in and prices come down and then get it. So the lesson learned from too much government intervention into markets, destroying incentives, destroying basically our capacity to fight these fires, the lesson learned is we need more. We need more government intervention in the economy. We need more intervention into markets to control and manipulate markets. All right, those are fires in LA. It's a true tragedy. A lot of people have died. A lot of homes have been destroyed. A lot of lives. I mean, just imagine what you have in your home. I know what I have in my home. Imagine all that gone one day. I mean, a lot of people are suffering. And it would be pretty amazing if, for once, people learned from experience. They learned from what is happening. I mean, even the Atlantic magazine had a cover called How Well-Intentioned Policies Fueled LA's Fires. They talk about a lot of these issues. Will anybody pay attention? Will anybody listen? The Atlantic is not exactly known for its free market ideas, but even it sees the obvious. Will they start doing prescribed burns? Will they start clearing brush? Will they pay less attention to the environmentalists? Will they be willing to give up on the Delta smelt? Maybe move it to an aquarium. There's a beautiful one in Monterey. Will they do any of the things, the relatively simple things that need to be done? And will they lift price controls on insurance so we get an actual real insurance market that actually conveys real information to home builders and homeowners, and therefore actually provides the right kind of incentives for people to live in the right kind of places, right in the sense of less likely to burn down?